Hey, good morning. This is Ken at Tortoise Capital. This is cohort three, small group coaching, August 18th, 2024. Just had our informal check-in. So, one of the things we're talking about is uh, the social context of coaching and uh, when and how to give and receive feedback. So, when I'm doing the public nightly podcast, the coaching that I do on that is really just technical in nature. Look at the patterns, look at the bright flashing lights, kind of trade by trade. And if we need to do more than that, like shift into either mentoring or fatherly advice or trusted friend that has an emotional content, then I'm never going to do that in the public nightly sessions because you know, 200 people a night are probably watching that closely, and it gets 3,000 hits daily or whatever in the life cycle of those things. So I'm never going to do that. Um, I'm If you're in the coaching program in the sound of my voice, I would just say if you need some of that, send me an email to say, hey, please address this or do it in one of our sessions. Or if I feel a need to do that, I'm going to send you an email or save it for one of these sessions. And normally, if it hits me, I'll send you an email right away. And it reminded me that, Friday we had just completed all the foundational work on improved writing, critical thinking, creativity, data literacy, um, improved speaking, and some of the expectations we have of our officers is for the year ahead and prepare them. And so Friday we jumped into the course and we were examining the Army in Vietnam and the kids given the briefing. And while he's talking, we were looking at the phenomenon of people that joined the army and how in the 70s and 80s that we made a strong move to appeal to higher levels in the social and educational spectrum to be able to handle the increased technological demands of our equipment. And we were not, to quote his phrase, aiming for the dregs of society. And it triggered me in an odd way. And I said, let me speak up for the dregs of society for a moment, if we may. And I related a story about a first sergeant of mine who said the category four enlistment group, which is you have priorities of what would be the most desirable qualities of a soldier, no trouble with the law, high technical scores, all that. Category four is the lowest level of qualification that we accept, and we try to minimize that in order to prevent what we think of as behavioral problems later on. And yet, my first sergeant in Korea pulled me aside one day and he said, sir, you got to love the category four soldiers because let me tell you, there are soldiers that need your love more than the other guys even do. And in war, the medals for valor and selfless service and courageousness and heroism are disproportionately earned by guys that come from category four. These very guys that in peacetime we say that we don't really want if we have a choice are the very guys who do the irrational things on the battlefield that go above and beyond with selfless service. And he says, I'm a category four enlistee, and the Army helped turn me around. And today I'm a first sergeant of an infantry company. And I said, I know what you mean. Because there was a time I was standing in front of a judge saying, I know that what I did was wrong, and I'm here to take accountability for it, but I respect the rule of law. And in fact, I'm reporting to basic training here in a couple of months, and I hope you can see a way to allow me to go ahead and do that as you're thinking about what kind of punishment I should have for the crime that I acknowledge I committed. Uh, and he said, all right, okay. And then a couple years later, I'm standing in front of the first sergeant's desk because that morning at 2 o'clock in the morning, they had a health and welfare inspection and they find a bunch of weapons in my closet. And I didn't know you weren't allowed to have weapons in your closet. And I didn't normally have weapons in my closet. But I was getting ready to go home on the train from Chicago to Detroit later that weekend. And that weekend on a Friday, I had gone to a martial arts exhibition and they had a bunch of martial arts weapons for sale, like nunchucks and whatever. And my brother's a collector, and I said, "Oh, my brother would love these." So I bought a bunch of them and put them in a duffel bag and took them back to the barracks and put them in my closet so that I could, get on the train the next morning and take the train home and give these to my brother. That's all right. That's what you do. And they had the health and welfare inspection and found all this stuff in my closet. I was like, so I get my Article 15 and the company commander's chewing me out and just how how could you be that dumb and all that? So they let me serve out my punishment without doing all the things they might have done to me in a court martial because the first sergeant thought that there was a soldier inside me, and he was later my sponsor in sending me to officer candidate school to become an officer in the Army. So except for those two guys, I'm not sitting here today the person that I am. So I'm in the classroom and the guy starts talking about the dregs of society. And I started telling those stories. And as I'm telling those stories, it then occurs to me, the way I'm saying these things could be interpreted as me chastising that guy, like reprimanding him in public, when it wasn't my intention, but it was really just to draw attention to the nuance of words and phrases and how words and phrases that we use in a rational conversational way might have deep triggers emotionally for other people. And then, so that's in my head. I'm thinking, oh man, the very motivation that I was using to talk about triggering words, the way I'm telling those stories could be seen as triggering to him, like he's being chastised in public in front of his peers. And this is only the first day of the formal class that lasts all year, and these guys don't know what kind of a lunatic I am, and they don't know that I'm, really just kind of an idiot and say what's on my mind and then try to clean up the battlefield later. So I was trying to complete my story about how words can be triggered and how you got to love Cat 4 guys, and I'm thinking about how can I start shaping that so that he can already see I wasn't trying to chastise him. And I didn't feel like I did that well. So after the round of conversations, I, stopped the class to apologize to him in public to try to explain what I was, what was on my mind and what I felt just happened. And I wanted to make sure everybody understood that I was not trying to chastise or be passive aggressive or be, and I probably didn't explain that very well because it was emotionally enriched. And, I said, well, let's go. That's the best I can do right now, but know that my heart was pure and then that my my words were not elegant or graceful or careful enough, in my opinion. So, uh, and then I went over afterwards to shake his hand. No, I said, you actually misheard what I was saying, sir. What I had been saying was that people in America were looking at the soldiers coming back from Vietnam as if they were the dregs of society. I wasn't saying that soldiers were dregs of society. It wasn't a personal interpretation. I just said, well, shit. That's what happens when you're 67 and there's a lot of words bouncing around this empty skull of mine. So that's one of the reasons I would say I'm never going to try to give emotionally emotionally centric advice or coaching in the public sessions. And so it just even an old dog has to learn new tricks. Um, Now, if that had been February and we were 5 or 6 months into the class, they had already had an opinion about me and the way I tell stories and what he would have known, that was just for illustration purposes. We'd have had that relationship on it. But that was it was a moment of zen on Friday on the first day of classes. Like, here we go. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about, coaching and teaching, public and private, and the power of words. Maybe that's some of the fatherly advice that I would share in this moment is your measure twice, cut once. Uh, you know, think twice and speak once. So let's go. That's my and for Hamad's I already mentioned to Chi Wang. My daughter had gone into the hospital last Friday with a 105 temperature and severe headaches, and so they ran a battery of tests. They thought it was mononucleosis, of which there are several types, but it could also have been meningitis, which is really serious. So they ran a full battery of tests on her, including taking a spinal tap to get spinal fluid to analyze. And it's a teaching hospital, so the resident that came in to do the spinal tap was not really proficient at it completely and may not have done it exactly right and maybe induced a little bit of extra pain and leakage. And they had to do it again. So then she was getting spinal headaches and then ended up being in a full week. And the wheels of that bureaucracy sometimes go slower. So I had to get involved in becoming an advocate for my daughter's care to make sure they were very clear on what our expectations were, particularly since she's in her third week of medical school, and we don't want to start that off by missing a full week and then trying to play catch up while lying in a hospital bed and suffering spinal headaches. And could they please take that into account as we consider the treatment program with all due politeness and respect and humility and respect for your medical authority? Let's get this fucking show on the road and be a little more informative of what's going on, but without saying it quite in that way. But trying to be an advocate for her because her boyfriend was with her, but he's from Belgium and his accent is a little unusual for the middle of Kansas. And they're young and they've never had to be advocates for themselves like that. So that stuff was on my mind as all week as I've been trying to, go through the various responsibilities that I have. So yesterday she got discharged Friday night. We had dinner last night. Her energy level is 100% better. She's catching up. Everything's good. A real good sense of relief. And I slept if logs sleep, I slept like one. I slept like a log last night and slowly trying to get back to normal. I got a lot of catch up to do for coaching evaluations and writing and whatnot. So that's kind of where I am these days, looking to get back into the full rhythm of things. That's my check-in, and looking forward to what you guys have to cover today. Who's up?
Um, I can go with my check-in. So I had two
Okay.
very interesting weeks. Um, and they were very eye-opening in the sense that, from a trading perspective, they were very eye-opening in the sense that like it just I think after a day where I had the 5 hour loss, it struck me and it was like, okay, so that's the worst thing that can happen. Like that is absolutely the worst thing that can happen. You're down
Yeah.
5 hour. So what? You've recovered from that before. And I think that really liberated me and allowed me to think clearer the next 2 or 3 days of trading. And I think that was really good. Sometimes your blessings come in on
Yeah. With
in
bad
different
news.
ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really good from my side. My wife and I decided we found a week that we agreed on that we can go on holiday.
Yeah.
So basically, next week we're going to visit some of our friends in Europe, staying at their house. They have some kids, so my daughter gets to play around with some other kids, and we get to have some adult time as well.
Yeah.
So that's going to be like a welcome break. And then lastly, what I want to end with is like, as a father, I'm really sorry to hear about your daughter. I didn't realize
Yeah, it's
things
not,
were,
yeah, you got always, how much do you talk about and how much do you withhold? And,
yeah.
I also felt like I haven't been as thorough in some of the work I've been doing in the evenings. I've been looking to do kind of the minimum mission essential stuff of, um, meet obligations like that. Here's what I would also say about the last 2 weeks being interesting in the day of -5R. That comes at a time right after you'd gotten to a transition point in thinking about, trading, and we're looking to expand in a few areas based on the justified confidence of the statistics of the last, 3 or 4 months.
Mhm.
But now, if you also look at the last 3 or 4 months, the kind of a market that was the third leg up after kind of a correction, not as big as the one we just had, but it was a bit of a
Mhm.
correction, and then a continuous almost 3 months of market grinding and a little volatility, but looking pretty good and new highs. And so you get used to that sort of daily rhythm. Each day that we're working is part of that larger momentum. And then just as that feels like it's all coming together, and now I'm looking to expand it into a few other areas, the character of the market changes almost overnight and very quickly. Nvidia goes from 133 to 98. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
All of the Magnificent Seven are getting slaughtered. Biden drops out. Kamala is in. Trump is disassembling in front of our eyes. Uh, uh, Serious consequences of things happening in the Middle East um, and the Ukraine. China making noises. So really sharp sell off. And then after a 10% correction that feels like, well, of course, this is the coming apocalypse, right? Nope. 9% rebound just as fast and everything's wonderful in the world and holy smokes. So very much like a V-shaped correction where volatility went from abnormally quiet to abnormally volatile in the blink of an eye. It had two big directional moves. So that's the biggest possible change in perspective and market condition that you could have in 2 to 3 weeks, right after a very specific kind of a market. And what started off as could this be the big meltdown? No, it's not. It's the other one. So you get that. It looks like a disaster, so I'm prepared for a disaster, and then it's not a disaster, but it's moving disastrously up in the other way. If I thought it was going to keep going down and I was leaning that way, then the rebound hurts me just as much as if it had just continued to be a disaster and I wasn't prepared for that. So it turns out that the learning point in all that is just how quickly those storms can appear.
Hmm.
Gordon Lightfoot sings a story about that in the Edmund Fitzgerald, which is a Great Lakes iron ore freighter that was on the Great Lakes, and the gales of November come early and they just come up out of nowhere and creates sea conditions that are every bit as dangerous on the Great Lakes as they are in the open ocean, and sometimes even worse because the waves are tall but even more tightly packed, and so you actually get probably as much or more energy beating up these freighters that are designed for the Great Lakes and not the open ocean. And the thing just, uh, you know, all the ship's crew is lost. And it's just sort of a reminder of how fast those things can happen. So, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, or eternal, as they say, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. And if you want peace, you prepare for war. And the minute you stop preparing for war, the peace is jeopardized. And now you're replacing preparation with hope. And surely I can respond to that in the moment when I have to. I'll just start preparing to have the things that I need when I really need them. Well, doesn't work that way. So in the absence of volatility, it sometimes feels like all the preparation is like, well, why am I working so hard for those things that didn't happen? Yeah. Well, why did I? That's the same in the same tone of voice. Whenever you hear yourself thinking and feeling that way, you just say, uh, so I guess I should only fasten my seatbelt when it's clear that I'm about to have an accident. Oh, okay. I should only start buying insurance minutes before my house is going to burn down or I get hit by you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's sort of the same. Yes, so it's like how often do you wear your seatbelt when you're driving? Most of the time. Well, that's a really bad answer. That's a really bad answer. Most of the time I wear my seatbelt. You mean like there's sometimes you don't, you idiot? No, you always. It's a non-negotiable thing. So we've got to remember the obligation to prepare and to periodically look at those moments. A 5R loss when you have been using proper money management and risk management techniques is a really important gift if we learn from it properly. Is that, oh, I should stop trading. Well, that's one lesson, not the best lesson.
Hmm.
Uh, so to hear you say it that way is like, oh yeah, well, if that's the worst thing that's going to happen, it's going to be a pretty good day at work. Oh. And I've had that feeling at halftime with the soccer team when, we get in there and we get, we're losing 5-0. Yeah, against a team that just won the nationwide Disney 3v3 competition and competes at the national level with the best players on elite teams in America all the time. Remember when they came driving in on a chartered bus from that Florida tournament with a convoy of parents that had driven all the way from Florida to Kansas City to participate in our tournament? And this is the first futsal tournament that we have ever played. Yeah, and they beat us, you know, uh 13-3. Yeah, but in the second half, they outscored us 8-3. In the first half, they beat us 7-0. And we played better in the second half than we did in the first half because we realized, oh, okay, well, we're still us, we're still in our circle, we're going to gather ourselves and we're going to go take it to them as best we can. We're going to study everything about how they play, and now we know what right looks like. So yeah, it's the teachable moments. Um, I think one of the Stoics, it may have been Seneca, who said something like, "Don't waste failure by neglecting to learn," or something like that. You know,
I
learn
think
how
it
to
was
suffer.
don't let misfortune well, don't let
Yeah,
misfortune go to waste. You said it in one
right.
of the foundation videos.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the spirit of it is, man, you went to all the trouble of failing and then you don't learn from it. What a waste. Yeah, I think misfortune's the right way to say it. Yeah, that's better
Yeah,
than saying failure. It has a different
yeah,
a different flavor to it. So, all right, yeah, go ahead. Hey, let's get a quick check in from Chi Wing, and then back over to you, Hamad, for your any
sure.
uh, insights and whatnot.
Okay, quick check-in for me is that for the past 1 to 2 weeks, I was busy preparing my sons for their examination. So they are 9 and 10. So basically, they have no idea how to prepare. So yeah, I have to guide them through. Yeah, yeah. There's a quick check-in for me.
Yeah. And what's the examination on again?
It's a school examination. It's their
Ah.
primary school. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still young.
That's the important one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Hamad, why don't you go ahead, let's go ahead and get into any specifics we got for this week.
So yeah, I've had a bit of a busy week in terms of like I was kind of going through it this today, what I've done this week, and I've had a busy period. As I said, like I started the first week with trying to find the movers, and that led me to more confusions. And then, there were some days I lost money, some days I made money. On the days that I made money, I kind of went over my charts the next day and realized, had I just stuck to just three, I would have made more money and I would have been more efficient with a better expectancy. And then I think at the end of that week, I kind of spent the weekend thinking about how do I want to move forward, and I decided that I'm gonna trade XLE, EWZ, and DIA. They're my primary three targets. I have the option to add a fourth target if I find something looking interesting on the charts, or and more importantly, if I get a sniper setup. If I get a sniper setup, then that becomes my fourth target. And so I think that's a more reasonable way of playing it. It allows me to capitalize on potentially something that could potentially move big,
Yeah.
that flags in my systems. And at the same time, it gives me the opportunity to work on my execution efficiency, like becoming more efficient with my execution, and then learning how to read the 10-minute charts more effectively than I am reading them right now. I think a lot of the rules that I'm using right now are adopted from the 3-minute charts. Yeah, they work, but I think the 10-minute has a different flavor. And then
Yeah.
I need to tailor to that flavor to make sure I'm getting things right. So along with that, I did a study where I looked at basically all my long trades on EWW, EWZ, and DIA. And I looked at the study. What the study did was studied basically two exit strategies. One of them was exiting on the 3-minute PSAR, and the other one was the 10-minute PSAR. So it turns out that the 3-minute PSAR has a slight advantage of about 0.02 R. That looked at about 50 trades. So for me, that's not a lot of trades. And then and the difference between exiting at the 3-minute PSAR and my current strategy was about 0.02 R. So yeah, like not sure how I feel about it. It's not like a significant difference that would change things. Whereas
Yeah.
the 10-minute PSAR is a lot slower to react to the changes in volatility and price action. Therefore, kind of getting out of the dragon when you're up 2 R makes more sense than continuing to trade with the PSAR.
Yeah.
That's what the
The
numbers
jump,
suggest.
the jump stop on the 10-minute feels like you've given it all the reasonable time that it needs for the intraday trade. And then it's like, okay, I have an above average win. Enough is enough. Yeah, this sounds like sort of like if I was to name this strategy, it feels like a 3+1, you know.
Mm.
And it's also a form of core and turbo, where you have like 80% of your attention on the core three in the usual way each and every day. But you have the +1 turbo that says under certain circumstances, and there are several different kinds of circumstances.
Mm.
I could have a fourth one that gets special treatments, special guest appearance.
Yeah.
That doesn't jeopardize what you're doing with the other ones, but has a set of special rules for this special condition that allows you to keep that mindset. So if about 20% of your attention on that, that means maybe only one day out of 5. 4 out of
Yeah.
5 days, it's my core 3, and there we go. And then one day a week or something, maybe, or one trade a day or some moment, there's a clear opportunity, meets all my criteria. A special animal walked into my special trap, and I'm going to treat that specially. I'm normally going to be hunting deer, but suddenly there's a buffalo, and we're going to use all due care for that special moment. Or, I'm fishing most of the time. Oh, but there's an elk that so yeah.
Yeah.
That feels like a nice trade-off. The 80-20 mindset is a helpful way to look at that. The 80% routine done professionally. The 20% I'm going to still be professional, but the circumstances of that one are special treatment, special handling. And it's worth doing it because sometimes you get those explosive large moves that could give you 80% of your return that day compared to the 20% coming out of the grind. So it has that extra quality, but because you're not chasing 10 of those things to find one that meets it, no, you're waiting for that thing to come into your territory. It's almost like, you have what we would call an area of operations,
Mm-hmm.
where we're doing our thing routinely. And then that's surrounded by an area of interest where we see things shaping up in the outside environment, which could in the near future enter our area of operations and we can do something about it. So it's developing. It may come to pass. I'm going to have special rules on what to do with it when it comes in, but it didn't do exactly what I needed it to do to exploit it. So it just passes through. It's outside the range of my weapons, or there wasn't enough time, or had too many other things going on. I just notice it. But then other times it meets all my plan, prepare, or execute criteria, and then I can do a special treatment of it. So we like to think of that as looking at two different regions. One, the area of operations where I'm acting in the usual way, and then area of interest is one where I can observe things that are starting to develop, coming my way, maybe. And maybe it gives me a chance, may not, but it could be a part of the future. So we try to monitor. So we're not surprised when it enters. Oh my goodness, here's a chance. No, we're part of that finding the movers is watching them as they begin and start stalking towards us. And it's moving towards us, we're stalking it, and it has to develop. So that's the kind of, you got to have that mindset where my sniper is always kind of watching the trades I've got, and my spotter is watching some of these other things to set up the next shot. So I got to get that mind split as for the team, and that's why having alerts that are geared to aware you of the movement that's beginning, so you're not surprised by, hey, let me just run out and try to find movers. No, let me set up a warning and a filtering system that allows me to detect movement that's coming my way that I can do something about.
Yeah.
Which is different than saying, oh, that thing is moving, let me try to trade it. No, let me find things that are moving in a way that I can routinely do something about with the alerts and the filters. So when it starts to be ready to trade, then I'm fully ready to trade it. So give that some thought.
Yeah. That's kind of, so I've been looking at KRE in that same way because it flagged as, I can't remember, like a max pay and range compression for a few days, and then it was stuck in a range, and I was just, let me just have a look at it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you had the big gap up, did nothing, but the next day, on a day where nothing moved, that thing had the potential to pay me about 2R. I didn't trade it too well, but
it moves to an extreme and then gets really, really quiet. Then the big gap says, oh, something's just changed in the world of regional banks and finance, independent of all the other things that are going on. That one, almost more than any of the other sectors, does that.
yeah,
If energy makes that move, there's an immediate effort. Hey, I got to lock in my better prices now with updated contracts, and that has an immediate impact on the energy I need today, tomorrow, and the future. So those kinds of energy changes have almost immediate consequences. Technology triggers people emotionally.
yeah,
Finance just kind of, it takes some time for the bankers to decide, is that really a thing? But when you get that discontinuous large gap, it almost like it'd take 24 hours. Okay, this is what that means. Let's go. So you get the day after move.
yeah,
So I like watching for me, the 10-day high and low when something is closing up near there with a doji, dude, I am so ready for popcorn to start popping. Especially finance. It just is that way. Yeah, that's the mindset that I see with that too. If you imagine, I would like you to draw a sketch someday here in the next couple weeks. If I were going to draw a sketch, I'd be on my hill, my usual hill, under my shade tree, surrounded by brush for cover and concealment, and I'm watching that big wide open area, my area of operations, which has a fence line around it, and then the clearing around that, the area of interest. And I'm watching things moving in both. I'm shooting things that are in my area of ops, and I'm watching the things moving in the area of interest that may be ready to come into my territory and breach the fence, or maybe not. So it's got that two-step we call that the range fan, my left and right limits, that span of time and management that I'm going to deal with. I've got security to handle everything behind me, so I don't have to worry about guys sneaking up on me because I'm on the top of the hill and they're going to make a lot of noise and it's going to be hard to get to my fortress. But I can reach all those things out there with 2 layers. So whatever mental model captures the way you want to feel about the 80-20, the 3 primaries
Yeah.
and the plus one, the 3+1, whatever mental model works for you and picturing that. I mean, it could be something like also Chi Wang's picture of the mountain pass, things coming to most of the time, things are just these wagons that we want to exploit are just coming through the narrow path. Sometimes they come running up over over the ridge, a mountain goat. So whatever imagery triggers the frame of mind you want to be in to handle that, that's one of the ways you can quickly achieve that zero state. In the same way that that picture of the resilient badger behind me with his little sacred offerings, that's the little, each of those is like little power-ups that he has carried on his back, representing lessons that he's learned and things that he's offering when he gets back to the base camp. That's the resolute badger that just kind of grinds along doing his thing. Thick skin and teeth and claws to do the work. Come at me, bro. You know, it's sort of that helps me get my mind right when I'm trading is, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. You know, so that's a task for you for the next couple of weeks. Start imagining the artwork that's going to help you achieve that iconic state. So there I was trying to teach that lesson as part of the creativity course to my Army officers. I have a set of 7 or 8 experiential learning moments for them, and it was so unusual for them to be thinking in that way that I had a chaplain who's a senior chaplain, and you know is probably 10 or 15 years older than the other students, is really widely experienced. In the middle of one of those, he said, "Sir, I just got to stop you. I have no idea what it is that we're doing. I can't understand it. Can you?" I said, "Yeah, you're not. I'm asking you to do things before you understand them completely. I want you to follow the instructions of these experiential moments and record your feelings and reactions to them and share those with others before we have the great reveal. If there even is one way to fully understand all this stuff. And I'm not even sure there's a way that conveniently compartmentalizes everything we're about to do in a nice, neat package. But that's where we are, is let me reset real quick. Here's the task that I've asked you to do, you know, and I've asked you to record your answers to this on this little 5x8 card that you're building up with all of the insights that are coming from these little experiences. And we're going to do something later with those, but not until we get there. We got to first do these things. So it was kind of an interesting moment about how to take the unstructured experiences they were having, semi-structure them onto the note sheets that I asked them to prepare to plug into the templates, but which were not, when you looked at the template, the way I had them constructed, there were places with letters to put things, but it wasn't clear from the letters what was going to go in there. And it wasn't clear from the structure of the template what kind of an exercise it would be. But just the fact that it was there was causing them some cognitive dissonance as they tried to, what's that going to be like? And you don't know enough about that yet to worry about it. And you're working over here on these things. So you got to wait for a certain amount of time to pass before those things are going to, but it's coming. There's more to, so that was the kind of intentional disruption that I was trying to create in their mind. We were talking about leadership and the kinds of instinctive go-to behaviors that were triggered for them at existential moments in their life, periods of success or failure or challenge or whatever. What were the things that really left out at them? And it was trying to quickly extract those feelings and talking about them. So that was going from the unstructured to the semi-structured to the structured. And when we finally got done, I asked them to say, hey, look, now that you've looked at all these different aspects of your leadership experience, you've been assigned to make a presentation to a bunch of high school kids and their parents in the presence of your brigade commander who's going to watch you and how you do that. You got to talk to them about leadership from what you've learned in your life in a personal way. And we said, well, who is the audience and what's the purpose of the meeting? And why is my brigade commander there? Am I there to talk about what I know? Am I there to talk to the 15-year-olds, their parents, or both of them? Or am I there to talk to the brigade commander or all of them? What is this whole thing? And they got to do it in the form of a movie poster. Leadership, the movie. What does that picture of what you're going to talk about look like? What are the iconic figures that are going to be in there? And what are the bullet points of memorable phrases that you want them to have in their mind as takeaways? So they, what in the world? So they had to think about that and all the things that were on their little note sheets that were eliciting magical moments from their past to shape what was going to go on their movie poster. And they had to do that by themselves and come in and then brief it to each other. And then they had to exchange cards and then act as the movie agent to go brief that to others, a board of producers to represent the other guy's leadership movie. And they had to tell about it. And then they were going to try to make more sense or offer suggestions or get their reactions. Then they go back and give feedback to that. So they were all over the place with abnormal learning moments. And part of that was at the end of the experience, the importance of these little chunks of mental models that help them start to make sense of things in certain moments. And that when you start pulling those things together, you start getting a feel for what are my go-to mental models? What are the things that help me organize my life experience in certain ways? So one of the things that sticks with me is that little guy over my shoulder. That most of the time, win or lose, joy and sorrow, the mission keeps going, and I'm still marching along towards whatever it is that I've set my mind to. And the qualities of that little resilient badger, plus all the little things that he's learned along the way, no matter what else, that's the irreducible me. That is just going to be, I'm just going to be that guy marching along and grinding and let's go. Well, I'm going to share those leadership and performance moments in a more structured way. So you got that to look forward to in the future. Because I was so tickled pink by the way it worked out And in the spirit of true creativity, I had thought about it for weeks and months of how I was going to teach that class, and I didn't decide on how to do it until about 10 minutes before the class started. And I just quickly sketched out the templates that I wanted to cover on a 5x8 card and put it on the board just as I mean, you want to talk about waiting to the last minute to steer that thing in and to adapt, even to adapt it as I went. And it worked out exactly beautifully and even better than I even imagined it might. And a couple of the other instructors that were in the room with me who were familiar with the lesson plan as written and were watching me teach it as I taught it were just like, what? And then I say, oh yeah, I can see how that all, and it was the difference between doing those things and trusting that emergent process versus talking about it from a distance, from a safe place where everybody wants to understand everything before we start taking the first tentative steps. Yeah, that works on some categories of problems, but the ones that are really challenging but also full of potential don't lend themselves to that kind of pre-knowledge. Well, first, to be a really good trader, first let me understand everything about the market perfectly all the time. I don't know if you've met the market, but it's just not going to comply with your plan. If that's your plan, the market has something to say about your plan. And if I'm going to bet, I'm going to bet on the market because historically that's been the safer bet. Nevertheless, we're not trying to beat the market in that sense. What we're trying to do is humbly survive and make a living in a way that is harmonious and ethical and reliable and robust and growth oriented, but with respect for risk. So that's why I want you to take a picture, draw a picture of those elements that help you appreciate the new 3+1, the 80-20 rule, the area of interest, area of operations, um, whatever kind of icons and pieces of art that allow you to show somebody exactly what you mean. And if you draw that in such a way with just a few phrases, they should be able to, and the properly titled and some labels in there, it should already be speaking to them with the messages that you're encoding that will trigger you to adopt the right mindset that you want. So that's what I want to, that's why I've asked you to draw that piece of art. Okay.
Yeah. I'll look into that. The other thing that I did was I kind of wanted to understand a bit more about, like, I wanted to understand my performance a bit more on the 10-minute charts and see on what occasions was I making more money, losing money, getting caught in the chop and all of that. If I can pick up any early signs of, okay, today take it easy, and now aggressive, beyond the, I was kind of looking for warning signs from the market when the market opens just from price action.
Yeah.
And I studied, I want to say 3 factors: volatility, the 5-day rolling, 1-day rolling volatility, and I added the yellow zone breakout. It turns
the one
out that
I really want. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I had something to say about that.
So I didn't have enough data because of one of my statistical scores was very low because I was measuring correlation between performance and those factors. But it seems yellow zone breakouts are basically the most profitable thing. It kind of reinforces the point that the research that I did last year regarding the same topic. But then when you add volatility, it seems that volatility doesn't matter as long as there's a yellow zone breakout.
That's right. It's also the absence of volatility, but the breakout, it's location. So think about the sniper location. And so let me say first, what I would do is I'd take your three primaries and I'd go back 3 years and I would do the 10-day NDX.
Yeah.
And anytime it's between 90 and 100 or 0 and 10, flag that day to look at the next 10 days.
Yeah.
And when you go to that, find the day where it closed 90 to 100 or 0 to 10.
Yeah.
Draw a circle around that, and then just look at the next 10 days.
Okay.
And then look at what happened the last 3 months, and then what happened the next 10 days after that triggered day, or that it's like it's the Germans had this mine, a bouncing Betty, that what it would do is they'd bury this mine and it had a trigger switch, and when you stepped on it, it activated a spring. It would not blow up until you took your foot off of it, and then that thing would jump up and blow up within a second. And what that meant was that in that 1 second, it would jump up 3.5 or 4 feet. So the mine would explode near your torso and head instead of just blowing your foot off, which you can survive. Hideous. And there are stories of guys that step on it and they feel the click, and now you're stuck. And the only way off of that mine is somebody's got to come forward and dig around and then try to defuse the mine. And while that's happening, a guy who was in a sniper position watching that minefield now has a bunch of guys to shoot at who are coming trying to rescue their friend who's stuck on the mine. You want to talk about some cold-blooded killers who does not give a shit. That's, well, we're going to make that not such a dehumanizing experience. We're going to say, look, when you get to an extreme in the 10-day NDX of 90 to 100 or 0 to 10, it did not break out, but it's right, poised right on the edge. So I would argue something's going to happen in the next 10 days. So you're going to break out or it's going to revert to the mean. So that's really key. The next one you're going to look at, second phase, is anytime you have a 10-day NDX that's greater than 100 or less than 0. That's a day where it did break out. It closed and broke out. So that's like the next day. That's the day of the breakout. The other one is the day before a potential breakout. Then when you look at those, on each of those days, if you put the yellow zone bracket around there, especially the first one, it closed near that boundary. The yellow zone of that day's range is like really important, because then when it moves in one direction, the other side of the yellow zone is your stop on the daily basis. And now you might have a really good swing trade for a couple, 2-3 days. And you have the start of a really good intraday trade the very next day. If you take a look at some of your, like the last 3 to 5 days, a lot of those grinding days are inside the yellow zone of the previous day.
Yeah.
Right. So if that thing actually gets to a doji, you're not gonna, don't trade it at all inside the yellow zone. None. No matter what the intraday little signals and routine, if it's inside yesterday's yellow zone and it's and you can't get 5 MMRBs, hands off completely until it breaks out, and then you can do what you do. But if the yellow zone is wide enough that you can fit 5 MMRBs, that's half a range stat.
Yeah.
And that's tradable. Because if you put 5, that means you give it 1 on either end, and there's still 3 fat ones in the middle. So I have a chance.
Yeah.
So that will keep you out of that grind. Especially like in XLE. Ooh.
Yeah.
Uh, and if the range is if that thing is, if it's a doji and it's at that extreme 10-day high or low range inside the NDX 90 to 100, you automatically have a sniper.
Yeah.
That is
True.
that's max. At the bottom of the channel, it's max pain range compression. At the top of the channel, it's maximum joy
Yeah.
range compression, or max potential, or max positive. So you can still call it MPRC. I don't really teach that one yet because more guys want to go long than short. And that one, in my experience, the big index is more often a reversion to the mean trade.
Yeah.
It's easier to see it when there's a harsh sell-off that terminates in a doji and then rebounds. That one feels easy. But maximum joy, doji, and then a sell-off, guys, they keep wanting to buy it on a dip. Dude, it's falling. So directionally, that one is harder to take for more people. So that's why I don't emphasize it much. But what I want you to notice in this little study is just go back a couple, 3 years for your primary targets. And then notice what happens when it gets to the proximity of that 10-day NDX. And what happens for the next 10 days. Then you're going to notice if it's near one of those extremes and is a doji, it's even better. And then so I would do those 2 steps first, and then I would do, all right, now when it closes with a highlighted, it's greater than 100 or less than 0. Now there was already the breakout day already happened. So now I'm looking at the second day, and I'm looking 2 to 5 days out to see how far that
Yeah.
momentum, what does it look like 5 days after the NDX breakout? That's because you're looking at just those 3 symbols. You can look at 3 years. You could look at all that stuff in one day and just sort of just get a, yep. And what you're doing is you're watching the animals that you're hunting. What happens when they get right to the edge of the river? Do they cross it, or do they come back to the forest? When they cross the river, what do? Do they go rapidly and go and exploring? Breakout continues. So
Yeah.
you're trying to watch the game film of the animals you're hunting and stalking to see what happens when they get to boundaries, which we're just going to say for swing purposes is the 10-day range is what they've been traveling on, and they got to an edge. What do? Do they jump the cavern, or jump the ravine, or do they move away and go to explore the other direction? So that's essentially what we're doing. We're trying to learn their patterns of actions after that boundary. And then again, when that gets to a doji, if you can't get 5, so what's the definition of that? How wide does it have to be tradable in the yellow zone? Half the average range of the last 30 days.
Yeah.
Average range divided by 2, not average percent ATR, but just the range. So you could actually take, if you wanted to, range stat divided by 2. It's got to be that big or bigger to be able to trade tomorrow. So you already know at the close of the day if tomorrow you can trade in the yellow zone.
Yeah.
Think about that until you really understand why, and then draw a picture of that and put the indicator. It must be range stat divided by 2 to be able to trade in tomorrow's yellow zone. And why is that the case? Because I need 5 R10s to be able to justify. And then that's only tradable if it comes down near those boundaries and then starts to reverse. Now I've got enough room to go. That'll tell you right away. That will keep you out of the chop so much. but you got to draw that picture so you see the template. Okay.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah, we'll
that a
do
try.
that.
Give
It
that a try.
actually brings me back to my third and probably final point, which is I've been, as you mentioned, I've been noticing I tend to like trading breakouts. It's just something that I don't know, was programmed in me
You're a
over the
human.
years.
Yep.
Yeah, I on both sides, up and down. I love the potential behind breakouts. What I tend to do miserably at is I take the breakout, I get stopped out. Instead of stopping and reversing and trading with the range, I end up just kind of backing off. And this is exactly what you told me to do. You know, if the range is
Yeah.
wide enough, then it's worth it. Because I kind of ran a small study this morning where I was looking at, okay, so XLE past 4 or 5 days, what if I traded, you know, take the short, take the breakout, doesn't work out, take the reversal. And, you know, with having 5 MORBs, it makes more sense, or half a range set, that reversal makes more sense. So
Yep.
yeah, I think I'm in that space as well. Kind
Yeah,
of mentally. And
when the range stat, if it does like, and then on days when it does make a range stat and it starts to reverse, all that really says is, look, they stretched that rubber band as far as they reasonably could. They got everything. They got an above average intraday move. I got what I needed. They just walk away and that thing starts to revert to it's like the VWAP magnet trade.
yeah,
Oh man, is that a good one? On the day of a range stat move and it's done, notice where it finished near the V and compare it to the VWAP, and I got 2 hours left. That's the VWAP magnet trade.
yeah,
That's a special case. That's your 3+1, because now you're stalking that move as a special case. Why is it a special case? Because you don't see range stat size moves very often. That's the definition of it, is that it only happens 1/6 of the time. So if it happened today, it's by definition a strange day. And at the
yeah,
end of the move, there's a greater probability it reverts to the VWAP before it makes another range stat move. If it moved a full range stat, guess how big the move is back to the VWAP? Half a range stat.
true.
Because it started off low and all the volume was near the bottom. And then it just ran, and you're getting less and less volume pushing price higher and higher. So when that's done, the VWAP is influenced by all of that heavy volume that was done at the low prices. So mathematically, the VWAP is going to be in the middle of that thing, or maybe even closer to the bottom. So you're going to get half a VWAP, or you're going to get half a range stat move just coming back to the VWAP. Now, if it does, you know that was a 1 day and done.
Yeah,
If it doesn't even come all the way back to the VWAP and they're going to hold it at a price higher than today's VWAP, don't be surprised if tomorrow's going to be another good range day, a directional day, because they were willing to hold that price overnight higher than the VWAP because they think it's going to keep going. That's how you read that. Boy, that's some good stuff.
today's session deserves a Cornell no cheat.
Yep.
There are a lot of really good tactical.
Yeah.
I want to say life-changing tactical gifts that you've thrown in there.
Yeah, there's
Like really
each one
important
of
points.
those is a 5x8 sketch.
Yeah,
The power of the 5x8 sketch. Why is that the case? Because there's enough room to document the idea with some detail. 3x5 card, there's not enough room. But it's not a full 8.5x11 or an A3 piece of paper, which feels very formal and takes up a lot of room on my desk. But this little stack of thick, substantial 5x8 cards has a heavy duty quality to it that's all weather, and I can put, man, that's my weapon of choice. A pencil with a 5x, and I like a pencil because I can do a lot of different things that I cannot do with a ballpoint pen.
sure.
Ballpoint pen .03 or 0.3 for precision. But give me a pencil with shades of gray, and I can use the side and light pencil. That's the thing. So the art that I admire is the late 1800s. It's black and white pencil or pen precision and cross hatching and all that really meticulous. Oh, those guys, wow. And blueprints. I like blueprints. All right, what else you got?
So yeah, so I guess going forward for me, just kind of, I want to take not a step back. I think of it as a step forward. So my step forward is basically I'm going to focus on execution efficiency on XLE, EWZ, and DIA, adding 3+1, a fourth target of interest whenever it flags up. And what I want to do is I want to reduce the frequency of days where I lose more than 2 hours. I think
Yeah.
that's gonna play or that's gonna serve as a very important kind of foundation for me to move ahead and increase my risk per trade. And so that's the focus. I think one of the things I told Chi Weng, I think on Friday, is we need to work on more filters that stop us from taking lower probability trades.
That yellow zone piece where tomorrow,
Yeah.
if I already know range stat divided by 2, if that thing is smaller than that, I'm just going to arbitrarily say I am not trading in the yellow zone.
Yeah.
But if it breaks above yesterday's high or low, I'm fully ready to go.
Yeah.
And that's my trigger to green light. So you also got the 3+1. You got 3 research studies to do. One of them is on your primary 3 days when over the last couple years when the NDX closed 90 to 100 or 0 to 10,
Yeah.
circle it. What do the next 10 days look like? Get a feeling for it. Describe what you see. Part 2 of that is on days that it broke out higher or lower than that, what did the next 5 days look like? So that's like days 2 through 5 after the breakout. Describe that price. Was it flat? Was it large directional, or was it a V or a mountaintop? Did it go and then come back? So what did the next 5 days look like? And that'll tell you whether you want to be stalking the potential breakout of a doji that closed near the extreme, or just wait for the break, give them the breakout, and then trigger on really trading well the day after the breakout. And so that those little 2 pieces will help you extensively. So you got those 2 research studies. There's a third one, but it wasn't as important. And then you got to draw 2 pictures.
Yeah.
One picture is how you view your view of the 3+1 from an artistic perspective. I described a couple ways it might be done. And then the second one is a picture of the today's price range being tomorrow's yellow zone. And it has 2 parts. One where today was greater than range stat divided by 2, and one when today was smaller than range stat divided by 2. So you have 2 clear pieces of tactical guidance for tomorrow's trade.
Yeah.
It's greater than range stat +2. I'm ready to trade instantly from the open. If it was smaller than range stat divided by 2, I must wait for the breakout of the yellow zone. Period.
Yeah.
And then be ruthless on that.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
two research studies and 2 hand-drawn pictures. Or it could be, if you prefer PowerPoint. I would draw it, I would sketch it by hand first. And then if you
I
like
need to
it,
sketch it.
if you like it, turn it into a PowerPoint so other people can brief it. But yeah. Start
No,
with a
I
hand
like the
drawing
idea of
'cause it's-
sketching it.
Yeah. All right. All right,
Cool.
Chi Weng, what you got, man?
Okay. Let me share my screen. Hmm. Can see my screen?
Got it?
Okay.
The only thing that needs is grizzly bears.
Sorry.
The only thing your picture needs to have is some grizzly bears monkeying
Oh.
around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I started some summary first. So this is the histogram, the stat for the July. So in July, I'm getting about 50% win loss, about 1.6 coin flip.
Yep.
So average about 0.5. So coincidentally for August, which is up to half of August now, I'm also getting around, it's quite stabilized around 50% of win rate. Coin
Yep.
flip also around 1.6, average also around 0.15. So it's quite stable around these numbers.
Yeah.
And if I look into further into the 2 week study, this past 2 weeks is also 50-50. Coin flip is 1.4, so it's slightly lower. Yeah. And one more, if I look into more details about this one, if I break into the daily, which I start to see some pattern, you can see that this is the start of the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Most of the time I'm seeing this V curve here. This is a cumulative R,
Yeah.
and I record this by the open when I open the trade. Means that the trade that I opened earlier, actually I started to have a loss, and in the
Yep.
midday, then I try to recover back.
Yep.
This is kind of a pattern that, okay, some days that it can go up and it can go down, and I call it a day. And recently I keep seeing this this V-shaped recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. Now
Yeah,
this is
so
still you. This is still you emphasizing the long side, correct? And not trying the
um,
short side.
correct. Occasionally I take minimum
Yep.
shot.
Yep.
Yeah, but
Yeah. So
most of
I want to point out that the last 10 days have been different than the previous weeks where you were showing the coin flip that pays 8 to 5.
Yep.
The last 2 weeks, you've got coin flips that pay 7 to 5.
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
And part of that is that the shape of the daily the the shape of the market the last 2 weeks have been increasingly volatile and considerably down.
Yeah.
So I would expect a system that's trying mostly on the long side is going to fail more often. And the downside trades should be better. But if you're not taking them as much, you're not going to benefit from the volatility of the downward move. It's going to fail more. Your long side trades are going to fail more often. And the ones that work are not going to return as much until later in the day when the short side guys have gotten their fill and now it's relaxed a little more on the upside. So all of those recovery days are days in which the first half of the day was painfully down. So all of your longs are not going to work, but you're not getting the downside move. But then the second half of the day, after a sell off, those little recovery moves should actually start working. So I'm trying to turn that into operational guidance. First of all, even in a market that's designed to be painful, you're still positive expectancy. So that's a good thing. I would also just say there may be a way for us to start thinking about if the first two longs don't work, consider the short or just wait for lunch and wait for the recovery off of the lows.
Yeah.
So I think if it says, hey, if it moved half a range stat and is now stabilizing, I've got an intraday max pain range compression.
Yeah.
And now I want to be really, I want to have emotional resilience and energy and capital prepared for the second half of the day. So you got to watch your ammunition carefully and save a couple shots for that afternoon trade. Because if you were to just, if you were to cut each of, if you were to draw a red line down the middle of each of those daily charts
Mm.
and look at the right half of those charts, that's a pretty good day at work.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
correct.
So I would, that's what I would say what your data is showing, that it is responding to the change in the nature of the market as I would expect. I would notice that it's still positive expectancy, so I keep trading it. But now I'm going to start, now I'm going to take a look at the character of the day. Am I doing on that kind of a market? Am I doing better in the morning or in the afternoon? Afternoon. And maybe, so I got to keep taking those trades. What I would do is take the first couple live.
Mm.
If it's not making money, I keep taking them, but on paper.
Mm.
And then when the curve changes halfway through the day, start putting live ammo back on it so that you're still in the rhythm, but now you're putting ammo on it. I think that's gonna, I think you can come up with some rules in there that'll help you
Yeah,
navigate
yeah,
some of these more challenging days.
yeah,
Because
correct.
you should
Definitely.
clearly keep trading this thing because it's making money, but
Yeah.
there's a way to start sharpening your target selection. And then when do I use my ammo?
Mm.
So you still, we call that like dry fire or practice round or a blank round, so that you still maintain the discipline and you still record the result, but you're not spending the cost of a live round. So like when we're training rifle marksmanship to large groups of soldiers, we know that it costs 17 cents a round to shoot a rifle bullet. And until I see that that guy's ready to shoot a live round, I don't give him a live round. So we do a thing called the dime washer drill. So he gets into the stable position and he demonstrates breath control, meaning that he can inhale normally, exhale normally. At the end of his exhale, there's 2 seconds in which you have an absolutely stable position in your body until you start to breathe. When you start to breathe, the act of breathing expands your chest and starts to, it affects. Now, if you're pulling down on the rifle and locking it into the sandbag with force, that takes effort and energy. But it's hard for the it has to battle the expansion of the chest. Now I'm fighting against my own breath and I'm introducing variation. So stable position, breath control. Those two things I got to watch for until he can do that. I don't even give him a dime or a washer to work on. Now, once he's mastered steady position and breath control, I'm going to work on trigger squeeze. When you exert steady rearward pressure on the trigger, when it hits that critical state, it will click. Then the feel of the click and the sound of the click will make you flinch a certain amount. That click is caused by the firing pin being released and striking the back of the bullet and the primer, which ignites the spark, which makes the ammunition powder explode and sends the bullet down the rifle barrel. The amount of time that it takes for when the firing pin is released and hits the primer and launches the bullet has left the barrel just as you're able to respond to the click. Right? Actually, the bullet is out of the barrel before the click gets to your awareness That's how fast that bullet's going, 3,000 feet per second. And the distance that the firing pin must travel is 1/10 of an inch, a millimeter or two. So the strike, spark, explode, launch all happens before the feeling of the click triggers your body, because it moves at the speed of sound from the point where the latch dropped and the bolt is released. The time it takes for you to recognize that and the sound of it is slower than the bullet leaving the round. So if you can exert rearward pressure and don't flinch, anticipating the click, then you will not have disrupted your steady position. But if you start pulling back at that on that trigger, and then you start thinking about, oh, it's going to fire pretty soon, you start shaking in anticipation, then you're not waiting to be surprised by the click. You're anticipating the click. And that knowledge will make you change your steady position. So what we're looking for is, can that guy pull the trigger and then not flinch? Allow myself to be surprised. So here's how we test that. Get in your steady position, prepare your breathing. I'm going to place a little metal washer on the barrel. And the barrel is curved, so it's balancing on that. And I'm going to put that in. Now, what you got to do is pull the trigger, click, without dislodging the washer or an American 10-cent piece, which is a dime. So if I can, now, no ammo, it's just the mechanical click. If that washer doesn't fall off the barrel, then I suppressed my flinch. So when you can do that 10 times in a row, you have mastered breath control and trigger squeeze. Now, and only now, do I do sight picture. And that is, can I align the rear sight, which is a post, and the front sight, which is a circle? Can I place the point in the middle of the circle and put that right underneath the target that's on the paper target 25 meters away, scaled so it looks like a 300-meter target? Or actually, it looks like a 25-meter target to a person, right? Because we're going to zero the weapon. Now, what I do is make you kind of leave the weapon. Now, get into your position, do all the things, get the sight picture when it's where you want it, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to have you just look through the sights in the way that you normally look through the sights. And then I'm going to have this little target on a stick, and I'm going to move it on that sheet. And when you tell me left, right, up, or down, and I'm going to move that little target until you say it's perfectly aligned. When you say set, I'm going to mark exactly where you told me it was set. Then you move away. And then we do it again. So 3 times. Now, if 3 times in a row from a fresh start, you can tell me set, and that thing is within, I can take a 25-cent piece and put it on all 3 marks. And that means that you put your face on the stock of the rifle and had your eyes the same distance from the rear sight, and that you were lining up the front and rear sight post the same way each time. Then and only then do all 3 marks have close proximity on the target. That means that you are getting the same sight picture each time. Now and only now do I give you a piece of ammunition.
Okay.
If I have the weaponeer, I can take you to a simulator that shoots a little laser, and then it records if you got the same picture. But if you can do all those things, now we're ready to give you 3 rounds live and see if you can get a shot group, which is 3 rounds within the size of a quarter, which is half an inch. And then if you can do that at 25 meters, well, what we got to do is you're gonna actually aim at the target the same way you did before, and then the bullet's gonna go where it is. Now, I don't know if the rifle's calibrated yet. The rifle will shoot where it was pointed, but I don't know if it's pointing where you were looking. So you look and everything is lined up, but the bullet reliably goes over there. If you get 3 rounds and they're all tightly clustered, now I can go in and make a mechanical adjustment to the front sight, which raises up and down, and the rear sight, which moves left or right. And I adjust that. I make a certain, depending on how many centimeters that thing was away from the center of the target, I can tell you how many clicks to bring your rifle in so that your eye is looking exactly at the same spot that the rifle is going to hit. So when your eyesight process is aligned with the rifle's mechanical process, and then you get into a steady position, breath control, sight picture, and trigger squeeze, you're going to hit the target every time. Now, I can take you out to the rifle range and start giving you pop-up targets that when it pops up, now you can start actually hitting it at distance. Then when you can do that with a stationary target, now we're ready to give you a timed presentation of targets that starts with the 25, then moves all the way back to 300 meters. What you've got to know is that the trajectory of the bullet changes over those distances and that you have to adjust your sight picture based on how far away that thing is. And then if you can hit 36 out of 40 within the time period, you're an expert. And then if you can hit 31 out of 40 or better, you're a sharpshooter. And if you can hit 24 out of 40, you're a rifleman. And if you hit less than 24, we send you back and do it all again. So you got to go through a lot to get 50 cents worth of ammunition to see if you can zero the weapon, and then 40 rounds of ammunition, which is $20, to validate you on the marksmanship test. If I'm mobilized in the Army, and if I've got 500,000 people that got to qualify on their weapons each year, that's 500,000 times $25 of live ammunition. At some point, that's a lot of money. So before I waste that money just giving you a bucket of bullets, then having you shoot without control and develop all the bad habits that there are, I'm not going to allow that to happen. Now, here's how I train pistols. Because pistols, I don't have the sandbag and flat on my belly. I'm standing up and I'm holding my arm out and holding a 3-pound pistol, and I got to shoot. So in the pistol, to qualify, you got to put 49 rounds into it. You get, no, is it 21? 21 rounds. A certain number of them in a 10-meter target. So we start off with that by going up to 0 meters away from the pistol. We go through all the procedures, and I give you 7 rounds, and you got to shoot from 1 foot away, right into the bullseye. Easy. Take a step back, 7 rounds. Let's take a step back, 7 rounds. Take it until you've gone back, 10 meters, and then 25 feet. Now, so you build in excellence right from the beginning. So you train pistols a little bit differently than rifles, because that's a lot of money for 50 pistol rounds. But then only officers and very senior NCOs get pistols, and it's a good investment. So my point on all that is to say what we're doing, what I just suggested with Chi Weng here, is once you've got a calibrated system, what I'm doing now is steering him onto the different parts of the day. And as long as he continues to trade in that same way, whether or not to add live ammo or not is what's going on. That's why I say If the first two don't work, start shooting some blanks, but stay with all of the things that you're normally doing so that you can gather the information you need to know when that thing has started to turn. And now I can put live ammo on, because the second half of each one of those days is invariably showing a positive move. There was only one, maybe 1 or 2 days in there where
Yeah.
it continued to decay the whole way. But that's one you never would have shot live ammo, because all it ever did was just go negative. It never turned the corner to justify adding the live ammo back on.
Mm.
So I'd like you to explore that as an idea, and keep in mind what we're doing is the very mechanical delivery of live ammo to targets that are in your range and in your sights. But preserve the precision of your mechanical application of these rules, because even in a market that is the worst possible one for you to do what you're doing, it's still positive expectancy. That's a win. That's really important to appreciate. Let me find the market that is the worst possible one for my mechanical rule set. Oh, and it's making money? Okay. Let's go. All the market can do is get better, and your numbers will return once it starts moving in your direction. So that's
Yeah.
what I would say. What else you got?
I think, yeah, almost there. Oh, well, I found that basically the turning point, uh, is like is the end of the morning hold, like when it, if I maybe I can show
Yeah.
a chart like a DIA, like on a Friday. So
Mm-hmm.
basically here the typical way is that I try to trade the OR
Yep.
10
Yep.
or OR 30,
Yep.
and basically you have about 1.5 hours for it to stabilize, and then this morning hold will happen, and then
Yep.
I will have no hesitation to take the morning hold long, and that's where the recovery come back for me.
Yeah.
This, yeah,
And either one of those, either one of the first two, if it had been that kind of a day where they just follow through, you could have had the breakout right away and off it
yeah,
goes and running. We've seen those days.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then on days, the second trade was like approximately a collapsing dragon. If it just violated the previous day's VWAP, you
yeah,
should take that trade all day, you know?
yeah, yeah. All right.
And then you get the trade you're supposed to. If I was going to make you add gas, see where it goes from yellow to green,
Oh,
right?
you
Yeah.
mean the PD over
You got
here?
you have an emerging dragon and an R in hand.
You can
Bang.
add a symbol. Yeah,
And then be ruthlessly crazy on preserving, like cut your stop in half so that the second one doesn't eat the first one with a routine stop. Now, it turns out that it wouldn't have added much, but on days when that thing just keeps going and makes a range stat move, yeah. What's the size of the range stat in DIA?
uh, it's R5 is 1.3. So five is $6.6, $6.60,
Right,
65.
right. So at 405 is the bottom of the day. That thing could go to 411, right? That thing could go to 411 before it becomes a crazy day. So your first entry at 405.75, second entry at 406.25, there's still $4 of upside move left before it becomes a crazy up day. So getting that second shot in allows you to experience the big win. But if you don't get the range stat move, you got to have that tight enough that it doesn't defeat you on the, like where I'd raise that thing to the skin of the dragon would be, let's say you entered on the bar where it turned green. Go to that spot. Yeah. Then you got 1, 2, 3 bars sideways-ish. Fourth bar makes a new high.
Then you
No, go back. Yeah. Fourth bar makes a new high. Bang. Skin of the dragon.
over here.
And then I just let it run with 2 positions on. Skin of the dragon, let it run. You'll be really happy if you do that.
Okay.
So if I've only got 1 position on, then I wait for the R10 to roll over, then jump stop. If I put a second position on, automatically skin of the dragon.
Okay.
And
Understand.
don't think twice. Let it fire and forget, then go away. Price hitting skin of the dragon.
Understand.
I like that. So I like that so much.
Yep, yep. I agree. So I also like the jump stop as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
So
actually got it. That's kind of like where you hit that red dot on there. The R10 was probably wiggling live, and you said, enough is enough, and I cover my losses. Done.
yeah,
That's a very good decision.
yeah. Basically at this point of time, I also tell Hama that I recover from -4R to break
Yeah, yeah,
even.
yeah,
I
yeah,
eagerly want to close my, but I don't want to. I yeah.
yeah. There's something to be said for playing good defense
Yeah,
and not giving them a grip on you.
yeah.
Battle them to a draw like that, in the world of chess. There are times when, hey, I got a draw out of that one. He had a winning position on me, and I got a draw. That's a good day at work. And I'm going to win on days that I have winning positions. And on days I have losing positions, I'm going to get a draw.
So Ken, for your suggestion is that basically here for the beginning of part, I should take 1 or 2 position if
I
it's
think so. I think so. I would go with 2. If I had 2 in a row, I would paper trade it until the paper trade starts showing the positivity. Think about that. What that would have done was made you miss this trade. So I'm offering that as something to think about.
yeah.
It may just be that the time of, when you start looking at where the time of day was when the turning point happened, and then say, hey, after that, the time of day, maybe I just start shooting again
Yeah.
after 90
Actually,
minutes or something like that.
yeah. Actually
I could,
last
yeah, I don't want to change a system that's positive expectancy. You
I'm
know what I mean? But
yeah, I
I want
understand.
to study that.
Actually, last Friday when I was talking to Ahma is that I'm thinking actually if I wait for the morning hope
Yeah.
is quite also
I
sufficient
think
for
the idea of the second position and then skin of the dragon exit, that may achieve the same effect because you're getting a larger win sooner on the second position. That may be better than going paper trade. I'd like you to just think about that and see what feels correct to you.
yeah. Okay, understand.
But you got a solid mechanical system that delivers steel on target, even in a suboptimal market. Let's not lose sight of that.
Okay, understand. Okay,
Yeah.
I will think about it and then yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. I think that feels like a natural stopping point. I've got a swing trade Q&A session with Phil and Griff coming up next in an hour or so. So I want to get mentally ready for that. And you guys, I think Hamad, you may have been in that course. I don't know if Chewing you were in it, but they did a pretty nice job of that whole thing, showing what Edge Raider can do. And hopefully I didn't add too much cloudiness to what was going on. So that thing's a pretty powerful tool, you know. And that may end up helping you with the identifying those days when the NDX historically was in one of those 2 conditions, 90 to 100, 0 to 10, or had closed above or below the 0 to 100. That gives you the breakout days. And then you
Yeah,
can, yeah.
I kind of need to go through the Owl Bundles user group
Yeah.
that was designed by Phil to
Yeah.
really get a hang of like how to do the back testing, collect information out of it. But yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah, tell those two monkeys that I told you to tell them to help you.
Okay. All right, I'll send them
Because
an
let's
email.
go. Because that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
And I want to freaking know that. And they're supposed to be working for me. So, and I want them to help you to put that test together, because we may find out that that's another class that we can teach and be compensated for our time and effort.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to that.
Hmm.
And it's going to help us with our actual personal trading strategies too. So,
No,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Can I ask one just kind of general question?
Sure.
I kind of from my experience in trading effects for a long time, I know that the European session tends to go really quiet in August. Volatility drops down and
Right. Yeah.
market
They're
becomes
all
really
out of
stupid.
town. They're all out of
Yeah,
town.
I mean, all of Europe is on holiday in August. So I was
Yeah.
wondering if the same phenomena happened in the US in the stock markets.
Never.
Okay, cool.
Because you got a bunch of little Tasmanian devils that don't take vacations. They are a constant. They are uncivilized. It's the
Yeah.
difference between a European badger and the American badger. There's actually a cute little YouTube that compares. If you just find it, and it shows the European badger is a nice, polite gentleman with a nice, clean, and then it shows a picture of an American badger that looks like a junkyard dog or some kind of street criminal that's ready to shank you with a knife, drooling and slavering around. And it's sort of, that's a pretty good comparison between Europeans and Americans from the way we look at it. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's the way it is, but that's I look at the two different markets and participants through that lens. That the Americans are just barbarians, don't take breaks.
Yeah.
So, all right, fellas, that's all I got. Let's
All
let's
right,
go
cool.
have a good day, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks or sooner as needed.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate the support.
Yep. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Uh,